Evan Mercer never believed in the supernatural. Lydia Kane laughed at the idea of being watched. And Marcus Vale? Marcus thought curiosity was harmless, until that night when a single app turned their world into a nightmare. One by one, they discovered that some things don't just watch you, they wait. And once they're inside your life, they never leave. I never thought a simple late-night scroll through videos could change my life, but that night proved me wrong. It started innocently enough. I had finished work early and the house was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels too heavy, almost watchful. My phone buzzed with notifications, most of them useless, but one caught my eye. An app I had never seen before. Its icon was strange, almost hypnotic. A single unblinking eye, black and red, staring at me from the screen. For some reason, I couldn't resist opening it. The interface was minimal, almost annoyingly simple, with no words or instructions. Only one video suggested for me. Its title was short and direct. Watch You. I hesitated for a moment, a cold shiver running down my spine, but curiosity pushed me to tap it. The screen turned black. Then slowly, a grainy image appeared. I thought it was my imagination at first. Then my blood ran cold. The video showed my bedroom. My bedroom. The camera angle was odd, high up in a corner I didn't have. My bed, my desk, my chair. Everything exactly as it was. I froze. My heart hammered against my chest. I scanned the room carefully, searching for some hidden camera, some device I had overlooked. Nothing. No wires, no lenses, nothing. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding my phone in shaking hands. The feed continued, showing me lying there, still as stone. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't moved in hours. I tried to close the app, but my phone didn't respond. Every swipe and tap failed. The black screen with the live feed of my room remained. That's when I noticed it, or maybe I didn't want to notice. My reflection in the dark glass of the phone's screen looked wrong, pale, stiff, almost detached. It mimicked me, but not exactly. It was too still, too precise, too perfect. And then it moved independently. The reflection in the video raised its head slowly, turning to face the camera, and it smiled. A wide, unnatural smile that stretched far beyond human limits, teeth too sharp, eyes glinting in the dim light. My stomach lurched violently, bile rising. I dropped the phone onto the carpet. The screen went black as it hit the floor, but the feed didn't stop. I could still see it. I backed away, fumbling for the wall light, but the bulb flickered and went out. Darkness pressed in, thick and heavy, and I could feel a presence behind me, breathing softly, deliberately, as if it knew I was watching it now. I dared not turn around. I stumbled backward toward my bed, my legs shaking uncontrollably. The phone lay on the carpet, screen up, cracked slightly from the fall, and the video continued, showing me. Or rather, the version of me that wasn't me. It leaned closer to the camera, tilting its head unnaturally, and smiled again. That smile, impossibly wide and sharp, burned into my mind. My heart felt like it would explode. I forced myself to run to the door, fumbling with the lock. My hands were numb, trembling violently. When I finally got outside, the hallway was empty and silent. No one. Nothing. Just the faint hum of the building settling, but the fear didn't fade. It had followed me. I could feel its gaze, the way a shadow presses against your skin without touching. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile getting closer, stretching across the darkness, over my bed, over me. When morning finally came, the sun's weak light did little to calm me. My room seemed normal, too normal. And yet, on my nightstand, my phone lay face down, screen cracked. I picked it up slowly, almost afraid of what I would see. The screen flickered on, showing only a single message, stark against the black background. I'm watching you. My hands froze. My blood ran cold. And as I stared at that message, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't a prank, it wasn't a virus, and it wasn't a glitch. Someone or something was in my room, seeing me, waiting, smiling. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or awake. The line between reality and nightmare had blurred, and deep down, I knew that nothing would ever feel safe again. That smile haunted me. It was there in the corner of my vision, in reflections, in shadows that shouldn't exist, and I knew, without a doubt, that it wasn't going anywhere. Sleep became impossible. The nights stretched endlessly, each one heavier than the last. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel it. Something pressing just beyond my vision. Something patient and deliberate. I tried telling myself it was exhaustion, paranoia, or a trick of the mind. But the sensation didn't fade. It followed me everywhere, a weight at my back, a cold breath brushing the nape of my neck. Even during the day, the quiet corners of my apartment felt wrong, like they had been waiting for me. It began subtly at first. Shadows flickered in ways they shouldn't, stretching and twisting across walls, moving against the natural flow of light. I would glance at them, and they would freeze, holding shapes that almost looked human, then vanish when I looked directly. I told myself it was my imagination, but the feeling of being observed refused to leave. I tried leaving the apartment, walking around the neighborhood, hoping daylight would protect me, but it didn't. Reflections in shop windows and cars would twist my face into expressions I didn't make, mimic my movements a fraction too late, as if mocking me. Then the mirrors started. I noticed it when brushing my teeth. My reflection in the bathroom mirror lagged behind me, moving independently by a second. I froze mid-motion, staring as my reflection paused, cocked its head and stared at me. Its eyes were darker than mine, hollow in a way that made my stomach knot. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. It smiled, that same impossible smile, and even in the fluorescent light of the bathroom it looked unreal. My pulse thundered in my ears, yet I couldn't look away. For a long moment I swore I could feel it breathing, its presence pressing closer with every heartbeat. Nighttime brought worse. My dreams were no longer my own. I would wake in a cold sweat, not in my bed, but somewhere else entirely, watching through someone else's eyes. I saw my apartment from strange angles, the ceiling above me, the floor beneath, as if a hidden camera had been placed where I could never reach. And always there was the figure, dark, hunched, and still. The face blurred, unreadable, but that smile always found a way to shine through, wide and sharp. I would wake before it could come closer, but the unease lingered, a shadow over my waking life. One night I decided to check the walls of my apartment more closely. I ran my fingers over every surface, looking for marks, scratches, or any indication that someone had entered. That's when I found them. Scratches, deep and jagged, forming a crude, smiling face on my bedroom wall. My hands shook so violently I could barely trace them. I didn't remember leaving them, and I hadn't seen anyone enter. The scratches were fresh, sharp, and smelled faintly of iron. I stepped back, feeling the room tilt. That same sickening feeling of being watched settled on my shoulders like a living weight. I stopped using the app, deleted it, restarted my phone, but it made no difference. Videos appeared on my device unprompted, taken while I slept, in angles impossible to achieve. One showed me asleep on my bed, the blanket pulled up around my shoulders, but in the corner, the figure stood, still as shadow. Another video caught me brushing my teeth, but behind me, in the reflection, a shadow lurked that wasn't mine. It never moved like a normal shadow. It lingered, waiting. The feeling of eyes on me didn't stay in the videos. It followed me into reality. I could sense it in the corners of my apartment near the ceiling, behind doors. It pressed into me, invisible and patient. I tried telling myself I was overreacting, that fear was twisting perception into something supernatural. But then I noticed the faint scratches appearing on the floorboards near the base of my bed, just enough to be noticed if I looked closely. Always a smile, rough and jagged, always there. By the third night, exhaustion had me on the edge of panic. I hadn't slept properly in days, and every sound in my apartment was amplified. The soft hum of my fridge became a sinister rhythm. The dripping of the bathroom tap sounded like deliberate taps from someone waiting, counting. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus, couldn't escape the sense that something had invaded my space in a way I couldn't fight. And then came the message. My phone vibrated on the nightstand while I sat in the darkness, eyes wide and unblinking. The screen lit up. A single message appeared, stark against the black. "Next time you won't wake up." I felt my body freeze. My hands, which had been trembling uncontrollably, went numb. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to pulse and swell, almost moving closer in reaction. I wanted to throw the phone, smash it, run from the apartment, but I couldn't. Something inside me, something that wasn't me, was holding me in place, watching. I realized, with a sickening certainty, that I had already lost control, that whatever had started with a simple app, with a single video, was just beginning. By the third week, I could no longer tell where reality ended, and the nightmare began. Sleep had abandoned me completely. Exhaustion made the shadows bolder, more aggressive. They didn't just linger in the corners anymore, they moved, subtly, almost deliberately, when I wasn't looking. I would blink, and a shape would have shifted across the room, a tall, hunched silhouette standing in a corner I knew was empty moments ago. When I turned toward it, it vanished, leaving only the feeling of being stared at, heavy and suffocating. The mirrors had grown worse. I stopped looking into them directly, but I could see the faint glimmer of movement in reflections elsewhere. Windows, computer screens, the polished surface of my refrigerator. My reflection no longer mirrored my actions accurately. Sometimes it lagged, sometimes it didn't move at all, yet it always seemed aware, always watching. Once I caught it smiling at me while I sat perfectly still. The smile wasn't mine. It was impossibly wide, jagged, and sharp, and it left a burning ache in my chest. Then came the videos. They were no longer confined to the strange app. They appeared in my camera roll, videos I had never recorded. I would wake in the middle of the night to the sound of my phone vibrating softly on the floor. On the screen, a new video waited. One showed my bed from above while I slept. Another caught me brushing my teeth, the camera angle impossible, as if it had been placed in the ceiling. The most disturbing detail was always the figure in the background, dark, hunched, still. Its face was blurred, but the smile always pierced through, wider than any human mouth could stretch. I tried leaving the apartment, desperate to escape. Every street I walked felt wrong, warped, like I had entered a different version of the world. Trees were taller, shadows longer, and everyone I passed had that same impossibly wide smile for a fleeting second before turning normal again. I ran into alleys, tried to shake the feeling that someone was behind me, always just out of sight. When I looked back, the streets appeared empty, but the eyes lingered in the reflections of windows, watching me, waiting. Returning home did not bring relief. The apartment was no longer a sanctuary. My door, which I had locked carefully, was slightly ajar one evening. I could have sworn I had double-checked it. Inside, the air was colder than it had ever been, thick and heavy. On the floor, there was a photograph of me sleeping. I hadn't taken it. My stomach churned violently. Behind the photo, scrawled across the floorboards in deep black lines, was a message. "Next time you won't wake up." Panic set in, clawing at my mind. I tried contacting someone, anyone, my friends, my family, even random numbers. But each call went unanswered. My texts were ignored, my emails unread. I began to feel a gnawing isolation, a certainty that no one would ever see what I was seeing, hear what I was hearing. The world outside seemed normal, oblivious, leaving me alone with the presence that had claimed my life. The shadows escalated further. Objects began moving, Books toppled from shelves, chairs slid across the floor, lights flickered like Morse code, patterns I couldn't decipher but felt were meant for me. The soft hum of my refrigerator, the tap of my radiator, everything became sinister, deliberate, part of some rhythm I couldn't escape. I stopped eating, stopped drinking, stopped opening the curtains. Every noise, every flicker of light, every corner of the room felt like a countdown to something inevitable. And then, in the dead of night, I woke to the sound of breathing right next to my ear. My heart froze. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The air seemed to thicken, pressing down, heavier than any weight I had felt. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. The figure, taller than before, hunched, leaning toward me, its face still blurred, its smile impossibly wide, sharp, permanent. I couldn't scream, I couldn't run, I could only watch as it lingered there, patient, waiting, breathing in sync with me. When I blinked, it was gone. My body shook uncontrollably. Relief lasted barely a moment. On the wall, scratched into the paint above my bed, was a single word: watching. My stomach dropped. I wanted to throw up. My head spun. I understood then that it had never needed to be seen to be present. It had been watching all along, always. I realized, in that moment, the truth I had been denying. Whatever this was, it had claimed my life. My sleep, my apartment, my sense of reality, it had all been invaded. And now, there was no escaping it. The videos, the shadows, the reflections, the whispers, they were just the beginning. The real horror was knowing it would never stop. By the fourth week, exhaustion had transformed into something deeper, something primal. My body was awake, but my mind felt shattered, stretched thin between reality and a nightmare I couldn't escape. The shadows were no longer content to linger at the edges of my vision. They moved with purpose, following me from room to room, twisting and reshaping themselves in ways my brain refused to accept. I could feel them in the corner of my eye, crouched in corners, crawling along walls, always just out of direct sight. Objects in my apartment had begun moving. Books toppled from shelves, chairs scraped across the floor, drawers opened and closed by unseen hands. I stopped leaving anything where it might matter because I could no longer distinguish between ordinary accidents and the deliberate interference of whatever was haunting me. Lights flickered violently, the room alternately bright and dark, like a strobe warning me to watch, to wait. Every sound was amplified. The soft hum of the refrigerator felt like deliberate breathing. The tap of the radiator sounded like a countdown, rhythmic and unyielding. Sleep was impossible, and even waking hours were a torment. I hadn't eaten in days. The idea of food made my stomach churn, as if the presence in the apartment wanted me weak, starved, vulnerable. I couldn't leave. Every attempt to step outside resulted in fleeting glimpses of figures in windows just standing there, grinning. Their smiles were too wide, their teeth too sharp, their eyes hollow. They didn't move, didn't react when I approached, yet I knew they were waiting for me to return, for me to notice. Then, one night, it escalated further. I woke to the sound of breathing at my bedside. I hadn't moved. My eyes were wide open in the darkness. Something leaned over me. I couldn't see it fully. The shadows seemed to bend around it. But the presence was undeniable, its breathing synchronized with mine, slow, deliberate, suffocating. I felt my chest tighten, every muscle frozen in fear. I didn't dare move, didn't dare even think. And then I realized it was smiling. Even in the dim light, I could feel it. Its impossibly wide smile stretching across its blurred face, teeth sharp, endless. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. I wanted to fight, but my body refused to obey. It leaned closer, and I could feel a pressure in my mind, a whisper that wasn't spoken aloud, a voice threading through my skull. You can see me. Now I see you. My vision blurred, the edges of the room bending like wet paint. I blinked, and the figure was gone. Relief surged for the briefest moment. But then my gaze fell on the ceiling above my bed, and I felt my stomach drop. Scratched into the paint, deep and jagged, was a single word: watching. The air in the room thickened, pressing down on me as if it had mass, weight, and intent. I wanted to run, to hide, to escape, but the apartment itself seemed to conspire against me. Doors wouldn't lock properly. Windows reflected distorted shadows that didn't belong to anything in the room. Even the floor beneath my feet felt uneven, as though it were trying to move me closer to something I couldn't see. I tried to record everything, hoping proof would help, some evidence that I wasn't losing my mind. I set up my phone in every corner, every room, every angle I could imagine. But when I reviewed the footage, my stomach sank. Videos I hadn't taken appeared, showing angles impossible to capture. Hallways I hadn't entered, corners I had avoided. They were all there, filmed, occupied by the figure. Always it was watching. Always, its smile stretched wider than any human mouth could, eyes hollow, fixated. I began to notice subtle changes in myself. My reflection in windows and screens sometimes lagged or moved independently, mimicking the figure's crooked movements. Shadows across the walls mirrored my own in impossible ways, twisting, leaning, and bending. It wasn't just my apartment that was warped. I felt it in my thoughts, my dreams, my perception of space. It was everywhere, waiting, patient, relentless. That night, as I lay on my bed, paralyzed with exhaustion, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just haunting my apartment, it was haunting me. Every reflection, every shadow, every video I hadn't taken, it was part of me now. I had been consumed slowly, imperceptibly, until I no longer knew where I ended and it began. And as the darkness pressed closer, I understood the final, inevitable truth. It was no longer watching from the corners. It was watching through me. By the 5th week, I had become a ghost in my own life. Sleep had abandoned me completely. I moved through the apartment like a shadow, careful not to make sudden noises, careful not to breathe too loudly, careful not to draw attention to myself. But no matter how careful I was, the presence remained. The shadows, the distorted reflections, the videos I hadn't recorded, they were all still there, patient, relentless, waiting for the moment it could take full control. I knew leaving wasn't an option. The streets beyond my apartment felt warped, twisted, like a distorted mirror of reality. Every alley I ran down, every doorway I passed, revealed figures lurking, grinning impossibly wide, their eyes hollow and black. Even if I escaped the city, I knew it would find me. It didn't just occupy space. It occupied me. Desperation forced me to record everything again. I set cameras in corners, phone screens everywhere I could think of, hoping that documentation might reveal some pattern, some clue to what it was or how to stop it. But the recordings were never mine. They showed angles I hadn't thought to film, rooms I hadn't entered, and always, the figure was present. It was there in the shadows, standing just beyond reach, watching, smiling, patient and eternal. One night, in a haze of exhaustion, I made a fatal mistake. I looked directly into my phone camera while recording, a reckless act of defiance born from desperation. The feed on the screen remained black for several seconds, and then slowly, a face appeared. My face. Only it wasn't mine. The eyes were hollow, the skin too pale, the features distorted in ways I couldn't comprehend. And then I saw it behind me, my apartment, my furniture, and in the corner the dark figure. It mimicked the smile, impossibly wide, stretching across its blurred face. I dropped the phone, backing away, my pulse hammering in my ears. But the feed didn't stop. Even on the floor, the screen glowed, showing me, my distorted self, lying on the bed, staring back. I realized, with a terror that almost made me collapse, that the figure had been inside me all along. It had been shaping me, watching through me, and now I couldn't tell where I ended and it began. I tried to scream, but no sound came. My body refused to obey. The shadows pressed closer, bending around me, molding me into something else, something unrecognizable. I felt my mind splintering, reality unraveling like threads pulled from a fraying tapestry. Every reflection, every flicker of light, every whisper of movement reminded me that I had been consumed. By morning, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. My body felt hollow, a vessel. The phones and cameras I had set up lay scattered across the floor, screens cracked or still recording, each showing angles I had never seen, angles I had never imagined. And then I understood. I wasn't the one watching anymore. I was just another feed, another angle in the endless stream of the figure's gaze. I tried to leave, staggering to the door. It opened, but outside, the city had transformed into a reflection of the nightmares I had endured. Streets stretched and warped, buildings leaned at impossible angles, and figures lurked in every corner, waiting, grinning. I realized that no matter where I went, I would never escape. I was trapped not just in this apartment, but inside the eyes of something that could follow me anywhere, always watching. As I collapsed against the wall, my phone vibrated on the floor. I forced myself to look. On the screen was a new video in the app. Its title, Watch You. I could see myself lying there, exhausted, hollowed out, staring back at the camera. And behind me, in the shadows, the figure stood, smiling. It wasn't just watching. It had become me. It had always been me. I realized then that the horror would never end. It had no beginning, no end. It didn't care about time or walls or locks. It only cared about watching. And now, in a way I could never escape, I was part of it. Forever. Even now, as I write this, I feel it observing. You might be reading these words, feeling the chill creeping along your spine, wondering if this is just a story. But if you see your reflection wink, or a shadow shift when you aren't looking, know this. The figure doesn't need an app to watch. It only needs you, and somewhere just beyond your vision it is smiling,